And now stay tuned for another original Studio B production right here on the Voice17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome again back to the Richard James Show. We have another era that's coming in. You know, we celebrated the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King birthday. I think it was officially celebrated on the 17th of January, and we'll be going into February. And February is officially the Black History Month. Dr. Carter Woodson started out recommending that we do a Black History Day, or Negro History Day back in those days, and now it is expanded to a month. We know that the Martin Luther King holiday, believe it or not, was signed into law by President Ronald Reagan. Black History Month, shall we say, is a broader and more encompassing holiday that talks about the history of African people here in America, African American people here in America. And I know there's some people of African descent may not celebrate this particular holiday the way we do, because they don't know what we've been through. And today, what we're going to do, I'm going to, shall we say, speak to you, give you a survey course, so to speak, in African American history. We're not the same as other people. There are those historians, those individuals who consider themselves expert in history, who really believe that our history began with the slave trade. I think that was 1619, back in Virginia, when the first slaves were brought to the continental United States. And they think that our history began then, which is absurd. No human history could begin only a few hundred years ago. First of all, that was crazy that it began then. They write off the existence of major empires that existed in Africa, and they completely negate African history. So they don't really know, or they like to shut out of their minds, as they have been taught, that we have a history at all. And the sad thing about it is that many of our people do the same thing. They so closely want to identify with someone else rather than being who they are, and shall we say, having a love in their hearts for all people, but basically also have some pride in who and what they are, that they accept these negative impressions, these lies, these mythical statements that are put out by our society. So what we want to do, first of all, if you want to know your history, you got to do your own research with your own anthropology, your own historians, people, geologists, people who have the expertise, put together a true history. And we've had some great historians in our day, and we have some great historians that still exist that have done this. And personally, I don't like to deal with conjecture and innuendo. I like to deal directly with facts and nothing else but facts. And I have been studying African American history most of my life, starting as a child. And I can remember my mother, whose name was Lula Mae James, when I was a small child, used to bring us Black history books. And she would say to us, you got to learn your own history. She used to say, you have to study your history and find out exactly what things your people have done over the years. Well, let's just do that. Some of the things you've heard before, and you will also hear again, but we're gonna put it all in context and hopefully make it as interesting as possible. Now, the oldest bones, the oldest skeleton of mankind. Hear me now. I said didn't say of Africans. I didn't say of blacks. I said of mankind began in Africa. And they've found bones in different parts of Africa. The Yucatan is one place that they found bones, South Africa, other parts of the continent of Africa. So it has been established through scientists, both black and white, that mankind itself was started in Africa. Now, theoretically, then when mankind started in Africa, and we know that mankind exists and has existed thousands of years all over the world. So the theory is, and I don't remember the exact number of years, but thousands of years ago, mankind began to migrate to different parts of the world. And this was a long, long time ago. They migrated to Asia. And they had a dynasty in Asia known as the Shang Dynasty. Shang Dynasty preceded any other dynasty or nations in that particular area. Shang Dynasty in Asia. They migrated to Europe and had a group of people called the Grimaldi people in Europe, a short pygmy-like people. They were there thousands of years ago, maybe 10,000. I'm not sure the exact amount of years, but they were first found or known of in the Italian peninsula until they migrated to other parts of the continent of Europe. And thousands of years ago, individuals migrated to America. You hear what I'm saying? Migrated to America. There are many, many different African nations or people or colonies, or however you want to pronounce it, found in the United States of America. They were found in Mexico. There are some heads that were found in Mexico that are also found in Africa. Pyramids that were found in Peru, found in South America. These entities been there thousands of years ago, and these were of African ancestry. We're talking about different level and different stages. So that backs up the theory that mankind began in Africa. Uh, the Leakeys, Mary Leakey and her husband, were great scientists, white scientists, Jewish, as a matter of fact, in terms of ethnicity. And they discovered bones in the Yucatan. For many years, that was all that we knew. But then we began to look at other parts of Africa, and we also found other bones in different parts of Africa. But they found bones years ago. There were early historians doing the research and gathering up the facts when it comes to Africa. Meanwhile, back in our schools, whether public or private here in the United States, we were not taught our history. We were taught that we had no history. We were taught that we were ugly. that the standards of beauty that were applied to men didn't apply to us. So we believe that. I have a business, Lebanon Valley Market, and I see African Americans that pass my stand every day and don't even look my way. In fact, they look the other way. They move past me so fast so people won't see them. It's unbelievable. And I look at those folks. There's no way that I could come into a market and see the beautiful artifacts and edifices that we have in that market and not at least take a look at it. Folks don't want to be identified as African or African American. They don't want their white friends to see them over there enjoying their own art. That's sad. And this is not the first time I've had that experience. It's just the worst experience that I've had. I've had other African Americans do the same thing, but not to the level of degree that I've experienced in Lebanon Valley. And we're hoping that our folks, our people will wake up and learn to love themselves, to love their own, and to love all people, because there's diversity in terms of the human race, and we all have something to contribute and to offer. So, hey, learn the truth. And they say that what? That the truth shall make you free. Well, let's get back. Let's talk about the development of our world and our nation. And let's talk about some of the things that have occurred. There are a number of great civilizations that were in Africa, both on all throughout Africa, South Africa, West Africa. We have nations such as Senegal. We have the ancient empire of Ghana, and then when we look back over to the east of Africa, we see Kenya, we see Abyssinia, ancient Ethiopia. We have modern day countries like Tanzania, and all of these individuals are rich in history, rich in terms of art and artifacts, uh, just rich and very, very, very beautiful. Uh, Africa, known for its art and its culture. I've been fortunate to collect, uh, purchase some items that are extremely rare and hard to find. And if you dig into Africa and the type of art they have, it's astonishing. Africa is made up of many different ethnic groups and people who have their own particular style of art. When you look at some of the musical instruments that have been developed, the kora, for example, the djembe, different horn instruments have all been established in the continent of Africa in different ethnic groups. Let's just talk about some of those nations that exist in Africa. Let's look at Abyssinia, or what was once called Ethiopia. Ethiopia, during the period of colonization, when when most of the continent, nearly all of the continent, was taken over by Europeans, Ethiopia was never conquered or taken over by Europeans. It was never done because they were not permitted or have it. Uh, the last ruler or emperor of Ethiopia was a man by the name of Emperor Hala Salasi. Hala Selassie, some people refer to as the Lion of Judea. Why was that so? They referred to him as the Lion of Judea because he was a descendant of the tribe of Judea, a man by the name of King Solomon, another man who was his father by the name of King David, who were Jews. and they were also members of the tribe of Judea. Uh, Hala Salasi was a descendant of a man named Menelik the first and Menelik the second. Menelik the first and Menelik the second had a mother whom they referred to as the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba uh, was a beautiful woman. They said that she was so beautiful and stunning that men would have to look away. And she was awesome. But she also was rich, and somehow she was attracted to King Solomon. And there's a story of her traveling from her home base uh, in Africa to Judea to meet with King Solomon. They said she brought with her a whole caravan of riches of every kind, gold, frankincense. I mean, all types of things that she bring with her to share with her beloved. And together, they produce a lineage uh, that continue to rule Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia, when I say Ethiopia was never conquered, colonized during the period of colonization and slavery, because the Europeans had gotten together, they had a Berlin Conference in which they uh, put themselves together and and supposedly divided up Africa. Okay, you take Congo, Central Congo, got that. You take South Africa, you take Ghana, but one country that they were not able to pull in the reins in was Ethiopia. And the Italians said, well, we want Ethiopia, we want East Africa. So some folks, what they call it, show me countries, they show me. So they attempted to invade the country of Ethiopia. At the time, it was ruled by Menelik II. And they were on the shore, they came, they brought hundreds of ships and thousands of men to invade and take over this great civilization. And when they got there, they looked up on the mountaintops, the valleys, and they saw a number that no man could number. Historically, they saw history making history. They saw over a million, well over a million Ethiopians. And battle ensued, and the Ethiopians defeated the Italian host. Remember, Italy was supposed to be, or the Italians were supposed to be one of the great military powers in the world. And, that's where Rome was located. And they were defeated and driven away from Ethiopia. Later on in 1936, they came back again with more superior weaponry. They came with poison gas, uh, rifles, airplanes, a tremendous air force, and they hit Ethiopia and hit them hard. And some Ethiopians fought some of them to their death. Uh, Matter of fact, some African Americans, Ed Robinson, one, went over and flew for the Ethiopian Air Force. They did have a small air force, and they did combat, but they were no match for the large number of Italian planes and a large number of Italian soldiers and the weaponry that these races had in attacking and trying to take over another man's land and another man's country. So briefly, Ethiopia was taken over. And what happened was that Haile Selassie sought refuge and he had to leave Ethiopia. My understanding is that he went to England. And later he spoke before the United Nations. And he talked about how the Italians tried to take over his country. Well developed nation, sophisticated nation, well educated. And he told them one thing. He said, today, he said, they are attacking us blacks here in the continent of Africa. But tomorrow, they'll be attacking you. So if you don't do something to stop them now, then you will receive punishment and you will be attacked by your own people. You will be attacked by the Italians. And you know, as a matter of history, Haile Selassie was on target because a man by the name of Adolf Hitler, who rose to power in Germany and sort of considered himself a great ruler of the world, he did attack Europe. He attacked Russia. He attacked England. He attacked France. In fact, he was able to take over France for a period of time. The French were divided. The French, some of the French fought for freedom and autonomy, self-rule, under the leadership of General Charles de Gaulle. And then some of the French fought on the side of Hitler. England resisted. England resisted the Germans. And one thing, a great leader of England said, the only thing we have to fear. No, that was I'm sorry, Franklin Delano Roosevelt that said, the great leader of America said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Uh, and they had the British fought gallantly. The British had been known for its great sea power. But the words of Haile Selassie came true. You leave it to them to attack us today, and tomorrow you will pay. And that's exactly what happened. Tomorrow you will pay. Emperor Haile Selassie. Then we go on to other countries, like the Belgian Congo. That was taken over, obviously, by Belgium. And there was a man there who fought for freedom by the name of Patrice Lumumba. And Patrice Lumumba was captured after he had been appointed prime minister. And with the help of some of his African brothers and, and some Americans, he was captured and he was assassinated. So you had struggles. Ghana, for example, a man by the name of Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah, who was a liberation fighter, who had studied in the United States of America. He received his undergraduate degree from Lincoln University. And after receiving his degree, he also, while he was there, he worked at Sun Shipyard, did a marvelous job. And he later came home and led a labor movement and was able to take over his country free his country and became the first president of Ghana. So, we have a historical evidence about what had happened. Uh, we're going to get back to this overview or this survey, but we had a great gentleman on the level of Hala, Salasi, and others in our country by the name of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And we had our historical speech in terms of trying to end slavery that existed throughout the world. So I want to present to you just a small speech, sort of noting our liberation struggle, a speech that was presented by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and we have another gentleman that's presenting it. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back to our overview.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished platform associates, fellow Americans. 3 years ago, the Supreme Court of this nation rendered in simple, eloquent, and unequivocal language a decision which long will be stenciled on the mental sheets of succeeding generations. For all men of goodwill, this May 17th decision came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of human captivity. It came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of disinherited people throughout the world who had dared only to dream of freedom. Unfortunately, this noble and sublime decision has not gone without opposition. This opposition has often risen to ominous proportions. Many states have risen up in open defiance. The legislative halls of the South ring loud with such words as interposition and nullification. But even more, all types of conniving methods are still being used to prevent Negroes from becoming registered voters. The denial of this sacred right is a tragic betrayal of the highest mandates of our democratic tradition. And so our most urgent request to the President of the United States and every member of Congress is to give us the right to vote. Give us the ballot. And we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights. Give us the ballot. And we will no longer plead to the federal government for passage of an anti-lynching law. We will, by the power of our vote, write the law on the statute books of the South and bring an end to the dastardly acts of the hooded perpetrators of violence. Give us the ballot. And we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. Give us the ballot. And we will fill our legislative halls with men of goodwill and send to the sacred halls of Congress men who will not sign a Southern manifesto because of their devotion to the manifesto of justice. Give us the ballot. And we will place judges on the benches of the South who will do justly and love mercy. And we will place at the head of the Southern states governors who have felt not only the tang of the human, but the glow of the divine. Give us the ballot. And we will quietly and nonviolently, without rancor or bitterness, implement the Supreme Court's decision of May 17, 1954. In this juncture of our nation's history, there is an urgent need for dedicated and courageous leadership. If we are to solve the problems ahead and make racial justice a reality, this leadership must be fourfold. First, there is a need for strong, aggressive leadership from the federal government. So far, only the judicial branch of the government has evinced this quality of leadership. If the executive and legislative branches of the government were as concerned about the protection of our citizenship rights as the federal courts have been, then the transition from a segregated to an integrated society would be infinitely smoother. But we so often look to Washington in vain for this concern. In the midst of the tragic breakdown of law and order, the executive branch of the government is all too silent and apathetic. In the midst of the desperate need for civil rights legislation, the legislative branch of the government is all too stagnant and hypocritical. This dearth of positive leadership from the federal government is not confined to one political party. Both political parties have betrayed the cause of justice. The Democrats have betrayed it by catapulting to the prejudices and undemocratic practices of the Southern Dixiecrats. The Republicans have betrayed it by catapulting to the blatant hypocrisy of right-wing reactionary Northerners. These men so often have a high blood pressure of words and an anemia of deeds. In the midst of these prevailing conditions, we come to Washington today pleading with the President and members of Congress to provide a strong, moral, and courageous leadership for a situation that cannot permanently be evaded. We come humbly to say to the men in the forefront of our government that the civil rights issue is not an ephemeral, effervescent domestic issue that can be kicked about by reactionary guardians from the status quo. It is rather an eternal moral issue which may well determine the destiny of our nation in the ideological struggle with communism. The hour is late. The clock of destiny is ticking out. We must act now before it's too late. A second area in which there is need for strong leadership is from the white northern liberals. There is a dire need today for a liberalism which is truly liberal. What we are witnessing today in so many northern communities is a sort of quasi-liberalism, which is based on the principles of looking sympathetically at all sides.
Yes.
It is a liberalism so bent on seeing all sides that it fails to become committed to either side. It is a liberalism that is so objectively analytical that it is not subjectively committed. It is a liberalism which is neither hot nor cold, but lukewarm. We call for a liberalism from the North, which will be thoroughly committed to the ideal of racial justice and will not be deterred by the propaganda and subtle words of those who say, "Slow up for a while. You're pushing too fast." A third source that we must look to for strong leadership is from the moderates of the white South. It is unfortunate that at this time the leadership of the white South stems from the closed-minded reactionaries. These persons gain prominence and power by the dissemination of false ideas and by deliberately appealing to the deepest hate responses within the human mind. It is my firm belief that this closed-minded, reactionary, recalcitrant group constitutes a numeric minority. There are in the white South more open-minded moderates than appears on the surface. These persons are silent today because of fear of social, political, and economic reprisals. God grant that the white moderates of the South will rise up courageously, without fear, and take up the leadership in this tense period of transition. Now, I cannot close without stressing the urgent need for strong, courageous, and intelligent leadership from the Negro community. We need a leadership that is calm and yet positive. This is no day for the ramble rouser, whether he be Negro or white. We must realize that we are grappling with the most weighty social problem of this nation. And in grappling with such a complex problem, there is no place for misguided emotionalism. We must work passionately and unrelentingly for the goal of freedom. But we must be sure that our hands are clean in the struggle. We must never struggle with falsehood, hate, or malice. We must never become bitter. I know how we feel sometimes. There is the danger that those of us who have been forced so long to stand amid the tragic midnight of oppression, those of us who have been trampled over, those of us who have been kicked about, there is the danger that we will become bitter. But if we will become bitter and indulge in hate campaigns, the new order, which is emerging, will be nothing but a duplication of the old order. We must meet hate with love. We must meet physical force with soul force. There is still a voice crying out through the vista of time saying, love your enemies. Bless them that persecute you. Pray for them that despitefully use you. Then and only then can you matriculate into the university of eternal life. That same voice cries out in terms lifted to cosmic proportions. He who lives by the sword will perish by the sword. And history is replete with the bleached bones of nations that failed to follow this command. We must follow nonviolence and love. Now, I'm not talking about a sentimental, shallow kind of love. I'm not talking about eros, which is a sort of aesthetic, romantic love. I'm not even talking about philia, which is a sort of intimate affection between personal friends. But I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about the love of God in the hearts of men. I'm talking about a type of love which will cause you to love the person who does the evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. We've got to love. There is another warning signal. We talk a great deal about our rights, and rightfully so. We proudly proclaim that 3/4 of the peoples of the world are colored. We have the privilege of noticing in our generation the great drama of freedom and independence as it unfolds in Asia and in Africa. All of these are in line with the unfolding work of providence. But we must be sure that we accept them in the right spirit. We must not seek to use our emerging freedom and our growing power to do the same thing to the white minority that has been done to us for so many centuries. Our aim must never be to defeat or humiliate the white man. We must not become victimized with the philosophy of black supremacy. God is not interested merely in freeing black men and brown men and yellow men, but God is interested in freeing the whole human race. We must work with determination to create a society not where black men are superior and other men are inferior and vice versa, but a society in which all men will live together as brothers and respect the dignity and worth of human personality. We must also avoid the temptation of being victimized with the psychology of victors. We have won marvelous victories. Through the work of the NAACP, we have been able to do some of the most amazing things of this generation. And I come this afternoon with nothing but praise for this great organization, the work that it has already done, and the work that it will do in the future. And although they're outlawed in Alabama and other states, the fact still remains that this organization has done more to achieve civil rights for Negroes than any other organization we can point to. Certainly, this is fine. But we must not, however, remain satisfied with a court victory over our white brothers. We must respond to every decision with an understanding of those who have opposed us and with an appreciation of the difficult adjustments that the court orders pose for them. We must act in such a way as to make possible a coming together of white people and colored people on the basis of a real harmony of interests and understanding. We must seek an integration based on mutual respect. And so I conclude by saying that each of us must keep faith in the future. Let us not despair. Let us realize that as we struggle for justice and freedom, we have cosmic companionship. This is the long faith of the Hebraic Christian tradition, that God is not some Aristotelian, unmoved mover who merely contemplates upon himself. He is not merely a self-knowing God, but an other-loving God, forever working through history for the establishment of his kingdom. And those of us who call the name of Jesus Christ find something of an event in our Christian faith that tells us this. There is something in our faith that says to us, never despair, never give up, never feel that the cause of righteousness and justice is doomed. There is something in our Christian faith at the center of it which says to us that Good Friday may occupy the throne for a day, but ultimately it must give way to the triumphant beat of the drums of Easter. There is something in our faith that says evil may so shape events that Caesar will occupy the palace and Christ the cross. But one day, that same Christ will rise up and split history into AD and BC, so that even the name, the life of Caesar, must be dated by his name. There is something in this universe which justifies Carlian saying, no lie can live forever. There is something in this universe which justifies William Cullen Bryant in saying, truth crushed to the earth will rise again. There is something in this universe which justifies James Russell Lowell in saying, truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold weighs the future, and behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. So go out with that faith today. Go back to your homes in the Southland with that faith today. Go back to Philadelphia, to New York, to Detroit and Chicago with that faith today, that the universe is on our side in this struggle. Stand up for justice. Sometimes it gets hard, but it's always difficult to get out of Egypt, for the Red Sea always stands before you with discouraging dimensions. And even after you've crossed the Red Sea, you have to move through a wilderness with prodigious hilltops of evil and gigantic mountains of opposition. But I say to you this afternoon, keep moving. Let nothing slow you up. Move on with dignity and honor and respectability. Now I realize that it will cause restless nights sometimes. It might cause losing a job. It will cause suffering and sacrifice. It might even cause physical death for some. But if physical death is the price that some must pay to free their children from a permanent life of psychological death, then nothing can be more Christian. Keep going today. Keep moving amid every obstacle. Keep moving amid every mountain of opposition. If you will do that with dignity, when the history books are written in the future, the historians will have to look back and say, there lived a great people. A people with fleecy locks and black complexion, but a people who injected new meaning into the veins of civilization. A people which stood up with dignity and honor and saved Western civilization in her darkest hour. A people that gave new integrity and a new dimension of love to our civilization. When that happens, the morning stars will sing together, and the sons of God will shout for joy.
You have been listening to a wonderful speech that was written and presented by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and his brother Cook did a wonderful job of presenting that speech. We're celebrating Black History Month, uh, and so we will have a pertinent show of some kind throughout this month that relate to Black history or Black art and our journey. And that speech spoke to the issue current that exists now. It also existed 50 years ago when the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting to end discrimination and segregation. Well, let me tell you, discrimination still exists, and it's just as strong as it ever was. And the issue of the ballot, and when Malcolm referred to it as the ballot or the bullet, the issue of the ballot is back. And I think it's approximately 16 states have passed legislation to try to curtail the ability of people of color to be able to vote. Because without people of color voting and supporting our current president, he would not have been elected. Uh, so, right now they said, well, hey, we better stop those folks from voting the way they did. And so we tried to renew the Voting Rights Act, and it was defeated. Uh, and also, we tried to present it in the courts, and actually in terms of not so much defeated, but the courts did not sustain it. So the beat goes on, the battle goes on in that context. But getting back to our original speech, it seemed like the forces of bigotry, idolatry, the forces of evil continue to exist. And years ago, we were talking about some of the things that happened in Africa, because quite often when we get so caught up in our own struggle, we don't realize that we're linked by our brothers and sisters in Africa. And some of the things that we have gone through, they've gone through the same thing and continue to go through. Uh, we have an epidemic going on right now, and it seems like every country has been able to get the vaccine to try to eradicate it, but Africa. Only a very, very low number of countries have it, and as a result of that, uh, I understand that the disease uh, virus is rising in Africa. Now, some people look down their nose at one of the wealthiest continents on the planet. What I'm talking about, when I refer to Africa as wealth, I'm talking about natural resources. And we've had many, many issues in relationship uh, to natural resources and the exploitation of Africa. So what we have to learn is that uh, we should not allow ourselves to get involved with nations who will come in and try to take our resources. One individual said that they gave us the Bible and they took the land. Well, nothing wrong with giving us the Bible, but taking the land is a color of another horse. It should never happen, but it's still happening. We have issues and had issues in Africa, where the second largest economy in the world, which is China, have presented loans and given help in Africa to infrastructure, and they give them loans that they never really reasonably be able to pay back. And this is most unfortunate. We have to make sure that the loans that we give, that we're able to pay back. And I think that one thing that African countries are learning is to try to be supportive of each other. And this hasn't happened the way it should be. So we understand that that must happen. We have to begin to help ourselves. Um, it's we're gonna having a few issues today. We're gonna have to uh, uh, cut terminate our program just a little bit early today. Uh, got some emergencies that have come up, and I want to first of all, before we do that, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for continuing to support us every week. But I just learned there's an emergency that I'm going to take here. So thank you so much. When you get a chance, come to see us at Lebanon Family Market. The picture came on quickly, but please, yeah, there it is. This is what we have to sell and present. We're no longer doing the Santa Claus, but we have other issues. So please come down and maintain and visit with us. And you're always welcome there. And we welcome all people to come in. So I want to thank you again for tuning in. And I want to say thank you for your support of The Voice. The Voice is doing a wonderful job in the Harrisburg community. So you take care until we see you again next week. So long. This is Richard James signing off. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. And thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let's hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.